program. All right, and so how about John?
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm John Spiker with the Town of Oro Valley Stormwater Utility.
All right, Scott?
Hello, I'm Scott Bennett, and I'm also with the Town of Oro Valley Stormwater Utility.
All right, Anne?
I'm Ann Moynihan, formerly floodplain person in the county, and I am retired now. But Melanie courteously invited me to join, and we'll see if I can contribute to this group. I hope so.
Wonderful. And Austin?
I'm Austin Adams with the Town of Marana Environmental Section.
Great. Chris?
Good afternoon. I'm Chris Montague-Breakwell. I am the unit manager for the ZipDees permits unit at Arizona DEQ Water Quality Division. Glad to be here.
All right. Fernando? I couldn't hear anything on my end, but welcome. Let's see. Mead?
Good afternoon. Sorry, I have a cold. I'm Mead Meyer-Welburn with Team Association of Governments Planning Manager. Thanks everyone for being here.
Elizabeth?
Hi, Elizabeth Leipold. I'm at the City of Tucson. I work in floodplain administration and stormwater management. And we have a MS4 large, phase 1, and are excited to be part of this new group.
Wonderful. And Paula?
Hi, I'm Paula Bloomer with the Town of Marana Environmental Department.
Well, welcome everyone. Did I miss anyone? All right, so moving on to agenda item 2, in kind. So this is a reminder that regional planning efforts are enhanced by recording time donated by the attendees, volunteers and participants, and PAG collects data on the time dedicated to meetings and activities to apply for use as matching funds for grants and federal dollars. If you're paid with federal dollars, please let us know. And time spent in preparation for this meeting will be estimated by PAG staff who are knowledgeable of the agenda and meeting materials. At the conclusion of this meeting, the session report will automatically calculate your time spent in this meeting. And then time spent working on PAG and RTA initiatives, programs, and special projects may also be eligible for consideration for matching funds. All right, well, on to agenda item 3. We have Chris Montague-Breakwell here with ADEQ, who will discuss ADEQ's 10-year study of discharges from large municipal separate storm sewer systems, also known as MS4s, in Arizona. So welcome.
Thank you, Melanie. Again, my name is Chris Montague-Breakwell. I manage the ZipDees, that's Arizona Pollutant Discharge Elimination System, permits unit manager at ADEQ. So in short, if you're going to discharge a pollutant to a protected surface water in the state of Arizona, you would need a permit from my group. We do general, all permits, general and individual. So that includes the individual MS4 permits for those 8 large MS4s. And the general phase 2 permit covering 46 or 48 soon, small MS4s. We have recently put together a report analyzing a decade's worth of stormwater discharge monitoring report, or DMR, data, collating this this data and then analyzing it and pulling out some high level issues, problems, patterns that we're seeing. We had been collecting this data from our large phase 1 MS4s, large and medium, I should clarify, for a decade, and it's really just a gold mine of great information. I am going to put in the chat at the end of my presentation the link to the report on our webpage, and I'm going to give you sort of the TLDR version, because I know that you're all super excited to go and read the 100-something page report afterwards. I'm just going to give you the high level with some cool numbers and graphs to whet your appetite before you go and read that, because we're all a bunch of stormwater nerds here. Oh, okay, I can control the slides. Fantastic. So wait, why are we doing this report? What's the issue here? And the reason that we're looking into stormwater, and particularly municipal stormwater pollution, is that we know that increased impervious area from our roads, roofs, sidewalks, parking lots prevents rain from soaking in, and instead causes runoff that carries pollution from all of those new impervious surfaces, those hard surfaces. So pathogens like E. coli, metals, oil and grease, trash, nutrient. I mean, I don't have enough slides to fit all the different types of pollutants that could fit on here. But if you're familiar with stormwater, you can just imagine all the things that can end up in stormwater that then get washed with no treatment into the nearest water body. So the report is analyzing all of these pollution issues, and to help us gain sort of better insight on the state of stormwater pollution in Arizona. Okay, who does this report draw from? The 8 phase 1 MS4s. Phase 1 MS4, what, that's a lot of jargon, and it's easy for someone in my position to just spit out all these jargon terms without really realizing that, hey, people might not be following what you read about every day. So MS4 is the acronym for Municipal Separate Storm Sewer System, so MS4. And then phase 1. Phase 1 simply refers to the first phase of the EPA rules regarding stormwater that said that medium and large MS4s, cities and counties with particular population, you need to be covered. That was 1991. And then phase 2 of the stormwater rules in 1999 covered those small MS4s. So for those phase 1 MS4s, the big cities in one county, they all have individual permits sort of tailored to their particular situation. So that's the 8 are, let's see, the 6 largest cities plus Pima County, and also Arizona Department of Transportation. They're all regulated under those phase 1 rules. Their MS4 permits require them to sample discharges of stormwater runoff that occur inside their defined MS4 area. They typically have 5 to 7 discharge points that they're monitoring. Note that they are not monitoring their entire system. That would be impossible to monitor the hundreds, if not thousands, of stormwater outfalls, but rather points that are representative of industrial, commercial, and residential areas. So we're getting some idea of stormwater pollution from the particular land uses of industrial, commercial, and residential. And then we take that data, look for patterns, issues related to a particular land use. So, okay, so what did we find out? Okay, here's the TLDR on this, and for extra credit, I've also thrown in a comparison to the average of and max concentration for some typical pollutants, E. coli, copper, lead, and zinc, comparing it to our average sewage treatment and industrial factories discharge. There's about 130 of those in the state. So, your city's sewage treatment works, your factory that's turning out whatever and discharging using one of our ZIPTs permits. We looked at the last 5 years worth of data because we only had 5 years readily available. and then just did the average, the mean and the max for E. coli, copper, lead, and zinc for those, and then compared it to that decade's worth of MS4 discharge for the same parameters, just to highlight what a wild difference there is between. I mean, every one of these average MS4 discharges is above surface water quality standards. Sometimes way above surface water quality standards, like E. coli is like for if you're going to swim in it or even have secondary contact, like you're paddling or maybe wading in it. I think it's 200 something. So to have it in the thousands and to have a maximum of over 1 million, yikes, that's really pretty dirty stuff. The interesting thing is, gosh, look how low the POTWs in industrial wastewater is. And the reason I put this here not only to highlight the difference between the two, but also to show you how far we've come from 50 years ago when the Clean Water Act passed. And the numbers that you see for MS4 discharges were totally typical for your sewage treatment and industrial treatment. And that was what spurred the passage of the Clean Water Act, was rivers, the Cuyahoga River in Ohio, catching on fire again. And at the time of the passage of the Clean Water Act, the goal, fishable, swimmable, drinkable water. Many people said this was impossible. We could never do that. You're going to destroy our economy with this unfunded mandate. And 50 years later, economy is doing pretty well. If you look at that 50-year average, and we've succeeded. Those averages. I mean, we have look at maximums. Like, we have some occasional blips, but we actually have a very low non-compliance rate in the state for individual ZIPDs permits, and the averages are well below surface water quality standards. Like, we've succeeded. It was hard, and it took a lot of effort to do over these last 50 years. And I think the stormwater problem is going to take a equally radical change to how we think about pollution, this particular type of pollution, and maybe just as long to actually get it down to where we're meeting surface water quality standards for those stormwater discharges. But we've done this once before. Don't look at those MS4 discharges and say, well, you know what, it's high, it's always been high, there's nothing we can do, it's too expensive, it's too hard. There is absolutely something we can do to fix this. Okay, next slide. Oh, I just created a couple great bar graphs for your total annual pollutant loading for the metals, comparing again the MS4's annual discharge for the 8 large MS4s to all 130 of our sewage and industrial water treatment plants. And you can see that there are more, sometimes a lot more, in that further annual pollutant loading. Okay, what does E. coli look like? Oh, my goodness, that's also pretty darn high. And remember that this monitoring is from those 5 to 7 locations that the permit required. It's not for the whole MS4. And so, the actual report that we're looking at is, and the numbers there, we try to be representative, and the phase 1 municipalities try to be sort of representative of what their stormwater discharges look like. But those discharges are only actually a fraction of what the whole pollutant loading is like. And what we're looking at here is actually that estimate of, okay, if we're going to sort of extrapolate the full loading for the whole city or the whole county for Pima County, what would it look like? And I think those were submitted in 2016 or 17 to us. And these are those numbers. So we've taken the projected loading for the entire MS4, not just those 6 to 7, and put them here compared to the wastewater treatment plants. Skipping back for a second, here's the metals again, if you're interested. So, when you have a problem like that, where do you even begin to try to address that? Well, ultimately, like you go back to the root of this problem, which is our built urban environment and all that impervious surface that we've put down and created that ultimately equals stormwater pollution. Like there's a close correlation to water quality degradation and percent impervious in a watershed. So we know that's the smoking gun here is ultimately impervious surface. And we've dug ourselves in really a pretty deep hole here. Continuing this dug ourselves deep in a hole metaphor here, we need to do two things. First, we need to stop digging the hole any deeper. And that means whenever we have development or redevelopment, we require some kind of on-site stormwater controls that mimic that pre-existing hydrology. So you're not just pushing stormwater off-site as quickly as possible, but rather you're capturing, evapotranspirating, reusing, using for irrigation, what have you, on-site, similar to what that pre-development hydrology looked like. So you're not digging the pollution hole any deeper, but we're still in a pretty deep hole. So we can start filling that hole back in by examining our existing polluting infrastructure and then retrofitting it. And our phase ones are already looking at doing just that by analyzing, okay, where can I put some retrofits to existing stormwater infrastructure where I'll get the biggest bang for the buck, the biggest clean water benefit for dollars spent on that. And so retrofitting our existing polluting infrastructure from all that already built impervious surface is how we're going to fill that hole that we've dug ourselves into, how we'll fill that hole back in.
Chris, sorry to
Yes.
cut in. I see Mead's hand is up.
Sorry. Sure,
Hi.
I'll take it. Go ahead.
Actually, it was from a little while back. I wanted to see your first bar chart slide. If that's not too hard to back up a few.
Yeah, and you know what? Why don't I go through them and then I'll skip back to them while we're doing Q&A, and I'll just leave it up there. And I'm almost done.
Oh, okay, sure. And then the other thing I thought I'd chime in with is we probably should have let you know that this group here is all the MS4s in Pima County that we gather. We've for I don't know how many years, about 20 years we've had this working group. So you're talking with the stormwater managers of the MS4s just for context.
Oh,
so they
okay.
might be interested in like the use of local data and whatnot.
Okay, well, that's good to know, and everyone probably knows what MS4 stands for.
Great. You gotta save your time. Thank you.
So okay, how are we going to affect that change? There's a regulatory way. So we're coming up on MS4 permit reissuance phase 1 and phase 2. So the state could update requirements to emphasize a reduction of that impervious area and returning to the pre-existing hydrology to reduce that stormwater pollution. And cities and counties on their own right now today can update their code to address that impervious surface that's generating so much pollution. That's sort of like the stick. There's a regulatory means for addressing that. Non-regulatory. I think municipalities are already doing outreach and education, and the state. Well, we're trying a little also. I think there's always more that we can do to explain to people just how dirty stormwater is and how we're all contributing to it. I'm looking outside to my street and gutter system. That's what I'm looking at. We're all contributing to it. Myself, even with the built urban infrastructure that we live in. I do live in Tucson, so it's local. So we could always do better outreach about the impact of water pollution in our built urban environment. And we can use state and federal levels grants and loans to municipalities to retrofit existing stormwater infrastructure to stop that pollution. So some of those. So at the state level, the Water Infrastructure Finance Authority, or WIFA, provides funding to municipalities through both the Clean Water State Revolving Fund and the Drinking Water State Revolving Fund programs. Those are both federally funded, state-run grant and loan programs, I should say. Additionally, ADEQ has funding, a much smaller amount of funding, but some available for planning through 604B grants, which is a competitive grant we've recently started. And starting next year, we will be launching in this state a sewer overflow and stormwater reuse municipal grant. That's the name we have to use because we're getting the money from the feds. But OSG, basically sewer overflow, stormwater, water reuse. If you can connect it to pollution, you're eligible for a grant under this. And we should have an RFP out. Well, not this month. There's only 2 days left. Next month for that. That's going to be in for the next at least 4 years. I think it's. Oh my goodness, I want to say 300,000 annually. And again, a competitive program. And that's not for planning like 604B, but for actually implementing whatever you already got planning. Note that the feds have a really great website for going through and looking for funding opportunities where you can type in, this is, what I do and what grants or loans are available to me. There's even some that are available to nonprofits or private entities, none of which are actually here. So I won't go into that Department of Treasury, new market credit detail. That's all I've got. I'll take questions, and I'm going to skip back to that bar chart. Whoop, too far, slide. But Mead, of course, I'm happy to share this with you, or Melanie can, since I gave her this presentation. Any questions today?
Looks like Elizabeth has a question.
Oh, Elizabeth.
Hey, Chris, do you have that data on 50 years ago to compare with this current data?
This data is over a decade worth of MS4 data. I'm sorry, maybe I'm not sure what you're asking.
Oh, we were seeing the charts and noting that we're exceeding or having high numbers for these certain analytes. But yet you're saying keep continuing the good work because we've lowered the numbers. And so I guess I just wanted to see how high they were before. If you have that data, that would be nice to have on record in case people are asking how we're lowering it from, you said 50 years ago.
Yeah, I don't have data previous to what you're seeing up here, just because our electronic reporting wasn't up and running by then. So because we had electronic reporting, and actually a good deal of the MS4 data wasn't reported electronically, and we had a contractor go through and manually collate and put into a spreadsheet that this is the latest we've got. I don't have previous data for like POTWs or industrial wastewater, other than the anecdotal Cuyahoga River catching on fire was the reason for the passage of the Clean Water Act. We're definitely doing better than that now. But actual numbers, I don't have that.
Okay, so it's kind of an anecdotal based assumption that we're doing better. Um, that you're happy with these numbers, and if we just continue to monitor, make sure we're doing our IDDEs, et cetera, and checking our database over the years, and if an industrial group comes in and starts polluting, we have our data to show, hey, it was at this level and now it's way high. And so
I should clarify. I'm happy with the numbers for our POTWs and industrial wastewater dischargers. Yeah, we have some outliers who occasionally violate their permit limits, but we have a great system for dealing with those folks and getting them back in compliance. But the MS4 discharges, like, no, like those are way above water quality standards. Likely causing an impairment every time they discharge, and that's got to change. And really, my point of sort of putting these two up is to highlight how far we've come for those sewage and factory treatment plants to getting your average discharges well below water quality standards in the last 50 years, which people at the passage of the Clean Water Act in 1972 didn't think was possible. And it's going to take an equally big, probably just as long effort to get our MS4 discharges down to averaging below water quality standards. And we've got to. The Clean Water Act requires us to keep going and going until we're making sure that those discharges aren't preventing our protected surface waters from being fishable, swimmable, drinkable.
okay, thank you.
Yeah. Marie.
Hi, thanks. I apologize for coming in late. I was having technical difficulties, but I did want to ask. It looks like you're comparing the MS4s to the treatment plants, and are you proposing that we would want to treat stormwater the way we are wastewater from sanitary sewers or industrial facilities?
No, because I don't think it's possible.
Okay,
I don't
thank
think
you.
That's the active treatment that you have for sewage or for industrial effluent, that just doesn't scale up to the massive amount of discharge you're going to get after a monsoon rain in any good sized city. It's staggering how much you get. And if you look at those states that are unfortunate enough to have combined sewers where it's a mix of stormwater and sewage, none of them can build a sewage treatment plant big enough to handle the amount of water they have coming in. And so they're doing, hugely expensive, slow, desegregation of the stormwater and wastewater, or other desperate measures like DC building a giant tank that holds tens of millions of gallons that during storms they can pump it into and then slowly pump it out through their treatment system. All that is to say, no, you can't build an active treatment system like you do for sewage or industrial effluent for stormwater. A city of any decent size has hundreds, if not thousands, of outfalls. And so what we've got to do is go back to the root of the problem, which is that impervious surface that has that direct link to pollution, and start addressing that in our development, redevelopment requirements, as well as our retrofit requirements, because that's how we're going to cause the problem, is to get sites to not actually cause that problem in the first place. And that can be, any implementation of green infrastructure, large underground tanks, large stormwater ponds, whatever way. There's all sorts of different ways you can do this. Green infrastructure is the most popular one recently, just because of all the other co-benefits you get from it, which are fantastic. Particularly the urban heat island effect reduction you get from green infrastructure, which is kind of ever more important in Arizona. that's one of the more popular ways. And I know that everyone here has sat through innumerable green infrastructure benefits or stormwater presentations before, so I won't subject you to that.
Thank you. We're definitely gung-ho on doing green infrastructure, so happy to be working towards, well, Pima County is, maybe John Spiker's not, but there's a lot of really good information out there that is being collected by Right Engineering that shows how the different kinds of green infrastructure do removals. And so, but we haven't actually had a facility here in Tucson, at least not that I'm aware of, where there's been a study of water going in and then what comes out.
Yeah, just note, like, take a look at the International BMP database for their compilation of studies about the pollutant reduction, different pollutant reduction devices, and bioretention, treatment, wetlands, different sort of sand, compost media. They've got a wealth of data in there about the efficacy of different stormwater BMPs.
Yes, and it's Right Engineering that has been supporting the International BMP database. Yeah, so we're talking about the same thing. Okay, thanks.
Thank you, John.
Hey, thanks, Chris. A couple of different things. If you've only got 7 or 8 outfalls per, I guess, type 1 or phase 1 MS4, why can't the state make those entities go clean it up? It seems kind of crazy. Secondarily, I wholeheartedly disagree that impervious surface is our problem. If you remove the impervious surface, the pollutants are still there. They're just staying closer to where they were generated. You're not really cleaning up the problem by removing pavement and concrete. I'd like to see the state actually address the pollutants themselves. Is it brakes? Can we try to create a new type of brake? Is it the tires? Can we try to get to the rubber industry and create a new tire? Is it dog waste? Can we do something with dog food? I really think we're barking up the wrong tree here with impervious surface, although that does carry our pollutants somewhere else. I don't believe that's our major cause for pollutant loads here, which seem to me unrealistic. That those loads are monstrous, Chris. I'm just kind of shocked the state hasn't cracked a whip and said, this is unacceptable, go clean it up. Just seems kind of weird.
Yeah, I mean, the scope of stormwater pollution is shocking, particularly for, I think, people who, maybe not really familiar, like deep in the guts of the program. I'm not surprised to see that. The municipalities who put together the reports and submitted these to us shouldn't be surprised at how dirty it is. And I think EPA, in passage of the federal regs, phase 1 and then phase 2, recognized both how dirty stormwater is and also how hard it was to address it. And so they didn't say, okay, like, you've got numeric effluent limits and you've got to meet them. The EPA simply said, you must do the maximum extent practicable to reduce stormwater, which is this weird sort of, iterative standard that, as our knowledge of stormwater pollution, how to handle it improves, we can incorporate that into our permits. But yeah, it's a shocking amount of pollutants, and I'm hoping that the state, by putting this together and then talking about that, getting this out beyond just stormwater professionals like yourself and this group, can raise some real awareness about what is the largest water pollution problem in the state. As far as impervious, is that really causing the problem? Is it not? I don't want to get into an argument with you here, but part of part of the advantage of not having the impervious surface and having the pollutant stay on your site is, so like imagine you've got permeable pavement and there's an oil spill on your parking lot of permeable pavement. So, you know, if you didn't have permeable pavement, it would wash off the next time it rained, it would go into the MS4, and the MS4 is the one who's, you know, liable for that discharge if they even ever saw it. The impact would happen, and so you're externalizing the cost of that. Whereas with the pervious pavement, or, you know, bioretention on site, which, you know, you would totally kill all the plants in that with your oil. The owner, the person whose pollution it is responsible for that cleanup. And so I kind of like the idea of you know, having the polluter pay and no longer externalize that cost to the environment.
That makes sense, Chris. Again, we're trying to keep it more localized, that pollutant load. It's still otherworldly difficult to go get an owner to go clean up their stormwater.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, like this is hard. Like this is really hard stuff. And you know, like what you mentioned about, like, is it brakes? Is it tires? Can we do something to change that? Like, yeah, there is something we can do. You know, studies out of Washington first identified, oh my gosh, copper from brake pads really, and they worked with the industry and got them to change that in first in Washington, and then expanding it just because easier, like nationwide. You can get, you know, salmon safe brake pads. And Washington, again, their stormwater center has sort of found as the smoking gun for killing salmon in urban streams this particular chemical compound from tires, and are working with the tire industry to phase out, to remove that chemical from it, because it's far easier to, you know, proactively prevent the problem than it is to fix it afterwards. They've done some interesting studies that, you know, that tire compound is actually completely filtered out by bioretention with a sand compost media. But that requires you to put that in all these stormwater outfalls to all these salmon-bearing creeks.
And maintain
billions.
Don't forget that. It's not just these upfront things. And I've sat through several LID, and they're working really hard to try to create tools for the upfront and the back end here, training people how to maintain this LID stuff, because there's other benefits to LID than just stormwater pollution prevention here.
Yeah.
But, you know, it's a very challenging scenario to kind of wrap our hands around, particularly when not many people want to fund it. So it's certainly an uphill battle.
Yeah. And you know what? We will both probably work until we both retire on solving this problem. And I think as long as we're pushing the envelope, making people aware of this problem, doing it, then I don't know, I can sleep at night. Marie.
Thanks. I did want to note that we have in our 5 different types of land uses, we have a low residential, which has historically had some of the highest E. coli concentrations. And it's a watershed that is about 5 acres in size and has about 4 houses in it and a road, a dirt road.
Mm-hmm.
And it could be people's pets, but there are definitely javelina and coyotes and bunnies and native animals that are out there that are contributing to that source. So I agree with you that the pervious surfaces are going to hold back the water and the impervious can transport it. I'm with you with getting it at the source and having people's perspectives change about what's okay and what's not okay to do. And I hope to answer your question about that a little later.
I appreciate that, Marie. I don't know if that was for me or for Chris, but even up here in Oro Valley, we've got a lot of old equestrian facilities that are residential now, and they're still stockpiling manure because they're allowed to. And there's some simple things in the zoning code that we can come down and crack on people. But back to Chris's original point, we just don't have the resources to go check in on every single resident, every single commercial property, and ensure they're doing their part to keep everything clean. It's a monstrous task that, again, no one's really going to want to pay more money toward. So how can we kind of chip away at this thing? And Chris is spot on. Education and outreach is a huge component, and we're doing a lot of that. But how do we make people understand at their house that they can help us out here? It's difficult.
I mean, there are two sides to this. One is needs to be an ethical change to be making sure that there aren't any pollutants that are running off somebody's property. The other thing is that we have these standards that to most people are abstract, and they're not understanding. Okay, so there's an E. coli standard that is based on aquatic and wildlife standards. And I don't have any data to show that there has been a loss to an aquatic system or an ephemeral aquatic system that where there's a negative impact to an animal or a plant or something like this. This would help me make the case when talking to the public about how important it is.
Therein lies the problem with Tucson, Marie. We do not have surface water to go show people. Look at the fish kill.
Yeah.
Here you go.
Yeah.
Or again, a mesquite bosque that's just been waylaid by motor oil for some crazy reason. We can point to other things, dust and air quality, but that's not really this group's focus. So it's hard down here in Tucson because we don't see that direct connect, even though we're all pulling water from the ground. I don't know that the pollutants are making it all the way to the groundwater. No one showed me that. And to Marie's point, I haven't really seen that stormwater runoff pollution is a problem here. It doesn't seem like it. Doesn't mean we shouldn't talk about it, but it's not a priority for Tucsonans. I just don't believe it.
So one of the things that I've worked on a lot is recharge projects and looked at what the influent and effluent is in the what the quality was going in, and then monitor wells that are immediately adjacent to a recharge basin or along a channel. And E. coli, copper, lead, and zinc are not the kinds of things that go through. The things that are going to be going through are things like trichloroethylene, PFAS, what was that? PERC, the fuel that was there was an explosion up in southern Nevada that now brings that down into the Colorado River. Those things are not naturally attenuated by either the microbiome or by the clays that will adsorb to. Well, they've got a molecule that can attach to the metals. So there are things that are going to filter those things out from groundwater. So from the groundwater perspective, I think we're okay with these particular 4 items. But it's still the rest of it that is going to be in the surface. And for sure, when that water is running down the street, and one of the last samples that we were collecting, it was gagging. It was smelled so bad from the E. coli. So I know, well, John, you need to be out there collecting stormwater samples.
We are, but it's really clean up here, Mary. We don't have that problem up here. So I'm a bit biased on this stuff because we've got a very robust volunteer group picking up trash. We don't have a ton of low income housing, so we're we're fortunate, and I shouldn't pin my opinions on Oro Valley across the rest of the state, because there are some areas that just, they don't have the money for this stuff. They can't even afford to put a street on the ground, let alone go clean up stormwater. So it's challenging, and I feel bad for Chris's group up there in the state, but we can at least talk about it.
Yeah, and part of our challenge is, for those people who are strapped for money, is pointing them towards, federal resources, free outreach and education they can immediately take, but also illustrating how making, low impact development or green infrastructure, how you require development to be done, and how your transportation division does transportation isn't going to cost you more. And if you break down the cost for gray infrastructure and 10 years upkeep or maintenance of that with compared to a bioretention or something that is also a neighborhood amenity, that is also driving down the urban heat island effect. They're not that different in cost, but if any of you have worked with, tried to walk into, transportation division, head's office and said, I've got this great idea, green infrastructure, they're change resistant bunch. So it's a challenge. Any other questions? Okay, well, thank you for having me. I love talking to the stormwater professionals, just because, John, we can immediately get down into the weeds and talk about, well, this pollutant, groundwater, which I always find really amusing and fun. But I've done stormwater my whole life. Just a note, a teaser, we are trying to do a study for industrial stormwater pollution, where we're actually going out and taking the samples from our multi-sector general permittees around the state. And I say trying to do it. We've been trying since March to get samples, and darn it, there has been very little rain. And even when there is rain, we keep going out to these sites and they're not having any discharge. But we'll keep at it. So maybe I'll be back here 6 months in a year doing that presentation. Thank you, Melanie.
Thank you, Chris. I do see Mead's hand up.
Sorry, Mead.
That's all right. Melanie, how much time do we have? I don't want to take up too much.
You can give us a few more minutes.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Well, thank you again, Chris. It's great to have you at our meetings. This gives me a lot of ideas for our outreach. We have not revitalized it in many years, but we do have resources for, everything from horse keeping to pick up after your dog. And we just haven't found funding to implement it as much in the last several years. So I think we'll talk about that more towards the end of the agenda. But I think putting zinc in the conversation will be something to keep in mind, because we've mostly talked about copper and E. coli due to our local exceedances. But just to throw out there, we in our outreach template, we have created for the whole region, so it's more regionally consistent and more recognizable and cohesive. We do base it on protecting our natural heritage, what's the importance of washes, how they are critical, even the minimal seasonal waters, to support our species. So I think it helps to bridge some of those concerns that John was bringing up. But as you'll hear in Marie's presentation, that the impacts have been down because our efforts, we haven't been able to fund in part. I think that's part of the cause. But my question is about funding. So out of the funds that you listed, I know one was the planning funds. Do you happen to know if one of those could be used for outreach? Implementation?
Yeah, so the OSG one is really focused on fix or upgrade your existing infrastructure. So I don't think that would work there. For the 604B one, which is for planning, can you use that to plan outreach? Maybe, you'd have to have a convincing grant application. And I think if you sort of wove it into a number of other sort of implementation things you were planning that outreach was part of, which I know some of our successful applicants have done, then that might make it more convincing an application.
Okay. Yeah, we'll all get to talk more about that in the future then.
Yeah.
And that we don't have to have separated or combined sewers to apply for that. The
OSG. You do not. And it took us a little conversation with EPA about who's actually eligible. But no, you don't have to have a combined sewer. Yes, if you go to EPA's site, it kind of looks like it's geared towards those. But it won't be in Arizona because we don't have any combined sewers, the whole state. So sewer overflow, stormwater, water, and stormwater reuse, as long as you can like sort of relate it to water pollution reduction from your infrastructure, that's what it's about. And the RFP should be out next month.
We hope we might have to get creative too, because we know we have large unsheltered populations of people living in washes. So it's a complex health and economy issue.
It is, and I don't want our MS4 permits or for our water quality division DEQ ever to be used as a reason to crack down on or remove a homeless population. Like an MS4 permit is not the right tool for dealing with the unhoused. That's a huge, much bigger problem. And no MS4 permit can really address a problem that big and systemic.
That's fair. And I know the rest of the MS4s are familiar with how you've been using the words retrofit to be more broad than just green infrastructure. You said that that's in part because you have teeth for new developments as well as retrofit. Did I hear that right?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question? My audio garbled.
Oh, that you were categorizing green infrastructure falling into retrofits, and it sounded like there was more teeth in being able to require different retrofit solutions. And I'm curious, does that fall under like maintenance of our stormwater features? Does maintenance kind of fit in there?
Oh, well, I would say green infrastructure fits for both, development, redevelopment, and retrofitting. Like you can use it for both. And honestly, for development, I think it's a really easy fit for municipalities to say this is how you're going to develop in my municipality because of benefit XYZ as well as stormwater pollution reduction. And that's something many municipalities have done or have done in part already. The part about maintenance, I've forgotten what your question about maintenance was already.
Oh, I guess I'm looking for more of a definition of retrofit and whether you mean like maintenance of stormwater infrastructure, or do the teeth come in more when it's like redevelopment of a site?
So retrofitting would be you take out and replace some kind of old bad gray infrastructure that had zero stormwater pollution reduction in it. It was a system of pipes, channels, tubes that just drained water, maybe only considering flooding, and took it straight to the nearest wash. That would be a retrofit. I don't think maintenance really falls into a retrofit. You've got to be going in there and changing your infrastructure. And then new development, redevelopment. I mean, just because you've got to define it in permit, and you as when you're passing ordinances also have to have a good definition. What DEQ has done in our permits is just that any time that you're disturbing an acre or more, so that we can align it with our construction general permit requirements, which also kick in at disturbing an acre or more. So if you're disturbing an acre or more, then your phase 1 MS4 permit new development requirements would kick in. So again, like that metaphor about the pollution hole we've dug ourselves into. So new development standards stop us from digging ourselves even deeper in that hole, but we're still in a hole. Retrofitting the existing stormwater infrastructure to reduce that stormwater pollution problem we already have, that's filling back in the hole. So we're not standing in a deep hole anymore.
Great. Well, thank you. Thank you.
Certainly. Any other questions? Okay.
Elizabeth, did you have anything?
Oh,
Yeah, if the jurisdiction is already doing requirements for pre-developed flow, requirements for development, and they already have water harvesting requirements, and so they have detention, retention, plus water harvesting. What other avenues can the jurisdiction take? One thing I was thinking is gas, oil, or sand, oil separators for, gas stations and car washes. We have those on car washes, but gas stations, I know in the Phoenix area they use them, but they don't always use them here in the southern portion of the state. Is there other different avenues to take for the retrofitting?
well, I think there's the opportunities, like you said, making sure that facilities like car washes have the appropriate BMPs in place. Oil water separator would be a classic one, although I hope that these car washes would be discharging to the sanitary sewer, not the storm sewer. But another option that I've heard in other states is residents and businesses will get discounts on their stormwater utility fee if they put in BMPs that reduce the stormwater or clean the stormwater if it leaves their site at all. So you'll get some kind of discount for your subdivision or your home if you've got a rain garden or a bioswale in there. And that's a way, like a low-cost, cheap way you can affect retrofits by getting people to disconnect from your MS4 for a break on their stormwater utility fee. If you're a municipality that has a stormwater utility fee, because I recognize not everyone does, and by law, not everyone can. Sorry, Pima.
Thanks.
I had another question. We're seeing an increase of private SSO issues, and partly it's aging infrastructure for sanitary sewer lines, but it's also I think an educational issue. Some people think they need to throw out stuff in the toilet, or it could also be some of the aged folks can't afford going into a care facility when they get older, so they're trying their hardest to stay on their own in their apartment, and we're seeing a lot of clogging. And so we've got these SSOs occurring for that scenario, as well as in some of the manufactured home communities. what do you see as maybe some thoughts on retrofits for that scenario?
Well, I would consider an SSO really an illicit discharge and over under that, illicit discharge detection and elimination system, and also something that the individual zip dues permit that's covering that collection system, or your individual APP permit, depending if you discharge surface or ground, covers your collection system operation and maintenance. There's a whole SSO reporting portal where folks are sending that in, and our compliance unit deals with those. I'd say if it's a pattern, like if you're seeing a pattern, then yeah, something's got to change other than your whatever you're doing for maintenance. I'm not hearing from my colleagues in compliance that there's these handful of places that come up time and time again, because if they did, they would work with the municipality on trying to fix that. But they're not as finely attuned to seeing patterns because they're looking at the whole state, as you would be, down at the local level. Yeah, I think that's a tough one. And I would say, if you have a repeat problem, change what you're doing to address it, because doing the same thing expecting a different result is the definition of insanity. So be experimental, try something new. If that doesn't work, try something else. And if there's something that the state can do, and I don't want to promise anything because it's collection systems are really not our jurisdiction. But if there's anything like the state can do in, I'm not sure, let us know. Or let us know if you're like, hey, I have this terrible problem and here's what we're doing to fix it. What do you think? We're happy to talk with you about that.
So that program that you were talking about isn't related to SSOs. So we're still in MS4. We're separated from that. The county primarily takes care of these things, but they're, I think, finding it being it's overwhelming for them. And so we're being asked more and more to kind of assist, but typically we would go out and check to make sure people have identified our storm drain, catch basin inlets for some BMPs during the incident. But as far as, this, if it occurs a lot, then you've got, areas that we have remediated, but there's always going to be some residual issues, or there's ones that we're not catching. And so we're going to probably see increase in E. coli because of these types of scenarios. But these programs or grants or whatnot, with regards to sewer, that was not related to these scenarios, correct?
The OSG one is actually targeted at SSOs, so that could very well be a good fit. And I'll make sure you get a copy of the RFP when it goes out.
Okay, thanks.
Certainly. Okay, I don't see any more hands this time, so I think I'm off the hook. Thanks, everyone.
All right, thank you so much, Chris. All right, so moving on to agenda item number 4. We're glad to have John Spiker here with the town of Oro Valley, and he will discuss the town's efforts to identify and capture drainage and stormwater assets and infrastructure, particularly private assets, utilizing Cartograph asset management software in combination with Esri GIS software. So thank you for being here. And if that isn't an accurate description, then go ahead.
That's pretty close, Melanie, pretty close. As I mentioned before, I'm John Spiker, the Stormwater Division Manager. I do have Scott Bennett, who is our GIS analyst here. He's responsible for managing and collecting most of the stormwater data that we've got here at the town. Our town engineer, public works director is also our floodplain administrator. We're wearing multiple hats here, similar to Elizabeth over at the city. We're doing both floodplain management and water quality management here for stormwater runoff. So wearing two hats here. We are a phase 2 MS4 with the state. So that was nice to see Chris speak towards some of the issues all MS4s are dealing with right now. But today we're going to focus in on stormwater assets and how the town basically goes and finds them, inspects them, and monitors those. And as Melanie mentioned, we're using Cartograph OMS. That is an OpenGov platform. We'll go to the next slide here. We've been using Cartograph since about 2016. What the screen grab is showing you down below the title bar is all of our stormwater assets up here in Oro Valley. We're over 8,000 stormwater assets that we're managing currently. And as a part of our stormwater management plan and the MS4, we are tasked with mapping our storm sewer systems. Not only does that satisfy the state, but it also helps us plan for the future. When is that culvert going to fail? What condition does it actually perform in right now? How much money have we spent in maintenance, taking care of those particular assets? So this particular platform works really well for us. We can load photos in here, reports. We can take citizen or residential calls and load them into here. We can also assign tasks, whether that's a maintenance and operation task, or an inspection task. We can load those into Cartograph and move through our day. So it's really a one-stop shop for us over here in Oro Valley. And as Marie mentioned, or Melanie mentioned, it does tie into Esri. So that's really our backbone here. Scott does all of his work in Esri Arc Pro, and then it ports right over to Cartograph. So it's pretty seamless, but it also gives you that accuracy level some people might be looking for. So let's move to the next one. Most of you guys should be aware, but figured we'd throw this up anyway. What kind of assets are we tracking? Well, we're talking about culverts, catch basins, channels, storm sewer systems, outfalls, bank protection, really anything drainage related. We're able to capture that in Esri as a point, a line, or a shape file, and then it brings it right into Cartograph for us to then populate some metadata. Now let's see. So how do we actually go and rate our infrastructure? Initially, it's just based upon the install date. I guess the length of a period of time that an asset has been in there is probably the biggest controlling factor of when you're going to need to do some sort of maintenance or full-blown replacement. There's industry standards for life of service for most of these assets. Concrete's got a lifespan, asphalt's got a lifespan, plastic pipe, metal pipe, they all have lifespans. So we start with that. When did it go in the ground? Okay, that's easy. As we move through time, we've got 3 conditional categories that we assign to each asset. Those don't happen until somebody goes out and physically looks at it and does some measurements, takes some photos, has discussions or whatnot. But we look at the structure. Is it cracked? Is it impeded? Is it deflected? Is there erosion undermining the bank protection? What have you? So we kind of weight that at a 0 to 10, and that's just the bare bones structure itself. Then we've got operation. Is it actually carrying the water it was intended to? Is it plugged up with debris, with sediment? That's only weighted at 1. It doesn't really move the needle here as far as replacement goes, but it does trigger that 3rd category, what's the recommended action? That can be monitor. We can have monitor yearly, monitor after storm events. We can move it up the chain of command here to go from the inspectors up to the engineers or to the division manager. But that 3rd category really sets the stage as far as what are we going to do with it? Now that we know where it is, we know what condition it's in, what's next? What are we doing? That seems to be kind of where the state is right now with the MS4s. We know there's a problem. We kind of know where it's at. What do we do? So we've built in some little action items within Cartograph that allow this particular asset to move forward in time. And again, those are all, I guess, combined in an algorithm that creates an OCI rating, an operational condition index rating. We've tried to make ours simple. We're just using it kind of like letter grades. We've got 0 to 100. So 90 to 100, you're doing pretty good. 80 to 90, yeah, you're doing all right. Could be a little better, could be a lot worse. 70 to 80, you're right in that C range. It's time to start thinking about doing something. And really below 70, we need to jump on it immediately. We can't wait. We cannot monitor it anymore. We've got to create a project or go seek some funding to go take care of it. So that's kind of how we're rating our assets over here in Oro Valley. Again, here's kind of a breakdown of what you would see in the Cartograph screen. We've got our culvert structure here with some ratings, and you can adjust that back and forth. Same with operation. And then recommended action here. Scott's got a screen grab with the pull down, and you can see we've loaded these up, but you could have as many as you want, depending on what kind of actions your operations group might do or a contractor. So we use a lot of Monitor Yearly, particularly after and before the monsoon seasons. We want to get out and see what condition it's in, and then post fact, well, what happened this rainstorm or this rain season? Does it need to be cleaned up before the next one? Does it need to be replaced? So we don't spend a ton of time on these. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We only got 6 condition categories. It's pretty simple. So this allows us just to have a global snapshot of all of our assets or any one individual asset to kind of tell us how we're doing. I will tell you, it does help Oro Valley that we've only been in town since '74. Most of our infrastructure is relatively new. That certainly helps. And I mentioned it earlier during Chris's presentation. We've got a lot of folks up here with spare time and a desire to keep things clean. So we don't tend to see a lot of dumping in our washes that could plug up an asset. We don't tend to see a lot of just loose debris floating around, puller pop cups or trash bags. People see that it's cleaned up almost immediately. So we tend to not have a lot of just floating loose material plugging up our washes and our storm drain assets. That really helps us out. Okay. This is a screen grab of all the stormwater inlets here in town. You can see off to the left, we've got over 2,000 stormwater inlets alone. And again, those have been mapped either physically in the field, or we had an as-built plan set or CAD files that we could drop these into. We've highlighted one in particular, Storm Inlet 759. So we're going to kind of run through a little example of how we're using Cartograph in real time. As I mentioned, this is one of the ways we do go collect the assets. Here's an as-built set of plans. You can see we've got storm drain pipes, culverts, catch basins, inlets. There's tons of it in here. But it's a quick and easy way to go find stuff and then start dropping it into your Esri GIS platforms and then move it over to something like Cartograph. Most entities have access to as-builts, particularly on your major roadways. Again, a great place to just start hunting to go find these stormwater assets. It's a little more difficult when you're just walking around in the field to find them. I really don't advise that. But once you're out inspecting a different asset, you might run into 1 or 2 other assets. So always good for your inspectors to be cognizant of when they're out in the field. What have we missed? I will put in a plug for Cartograph OMS. It is usable on mobile devices. So an iPad, a laptop, a mobile phone. You've got access to all this cloud data at your fingertips while you're out in the field. So if you're standing next to a known catch basin and you see one down the way that's not on your screen, we make notes of it and bring it back to the office where we'll then upload it into the system. So this is cartograph ID number 759. It's a storm inlet. And you can see it's just got a lot of sediment that filters into this thing. So great. We've been alerted by a resident, or we just happened to see this in our inspections. What are you doing with it? Obviously, we got a picture. We know where it is. What do you do next? Okay, well, we're going to go out and assess this thing for structural condition, which you can kind of see the concrete looks pretty decent. The grate itself looks okay. The structure looks intact, but the operational condition is not good. Somebody basically covered up the inlet here, and it flooded the area out and sent sediment all over the place. So that's a bit of a problem. So we've gone ahead and created an inspection task here for this particular one. And Jane has gone out and done an inspection. Cartograph is great. It allows you to track how much time you were out there. Were you in a vehicle? Did you have equipment? $2. That was gas and a portion of the vehicle to get out to the site. And then Jane's time, $10. So if you really desired to break down how much is my inspector, how much is each asset costing my entity or my inspector, you can break all that stuff down. We do have our rating systems in here. We've got dates. We can populate all of that type of stuff. And we've got our overall OCI rating here. So really quick and simple dashboards that let you see the condition of any asset at any time. So we knew this one. Again, it got inspected, and structure's 90, it's doing pretty well. Operations at a 70. Something needs to happen here. So this was based upon the inspection report. It is a monitor yearly. Okay, that's great. That usually tells me it's been a known problem. We've got to keep our eyeballs on it. So here we've loaded a task for some kind of activity. This happens to be stormwater buildup, and we need our operations group to get out there and clean it. So within Cartograph, we can create a request for our operations group to get out and do something without physically walking over to their office and handing them our photos, without emailing it. This is all automated within Cartograph. So they get out there, sediment removal task prior to monsoon season. You're physically able to put in notes in here as well. So this is the actual task generated by the operations group. Again, they've calculated how much labor, how much equipment it took to clean that particular stormwater inlet off. So that's trackable if somebody would desire that. That's nice. It also auto-generates a notice to us here at Stormwater. Hey, the task has been completed. You need to go back out and re-inspect it, because we want that OCI to come back up after we've actually done an activity. And it might be 6 months later, but nonetheless, we've got to go back out and put our eyeballs on it. Did the operations group meet our needs? Did they meet our expectations? And subsequently, we need to re-rate that now that the operation rating has theoretically gone back up. So again, you get an automated email telling you that it's done. We run out there and re-inspect it. I know it sounds like a lot, but we go back out and re-inspect it, and you can see the inlet operation has come back up to 100, which tells me they cleaned it up really well. And we've got notes in here. What did the inspector see? Is it still monitor yearly? Yeah, it is. We know a lot of sediments coming at it. So we're going to leave it in that recommended action. Even though we just cleaned it up, we still want to remind our inspectors we need to continue to put eyeballs on it. And here's some photos from the inspector after it was cleaned up. Pretty noticeable. I'll flip back to what it looked like before. Eventually. Here you go. So that's what it looked like when we got out there initially, and then after cleanup. You can see, again, they did a great job cleaning that up for us. What these types of photos help us with is our operations guys doing what we're paying them for. We're carrying 3 separate operations staff members. So again, reports out to town council. reports out to our constituents, yes, you are getting your money's worth with our operations group. And here's the photos to prove that. Not that I like having to pull those out, but we're in Oro Valley. We get a lot of questions. We're also using this as a means to track our SWIP program here. It's not really what Cartograph is intended to do, but we've made it work for us by transforming a construction site into a GIS shapefile or dot. I think Scott might be using dots. This allows our inspector an opportunity to load up inspection reports, load up photos, and alert the staff here if there's any known problems. So we'll walk through a little example of this as well. Here's our current SWIP activities. So currently we're looking at, looks like 76 locations, and we're going to highlight La Cañada Ridge, which is in purple there. And we'll kind of take a peek at what we're doing for SWIP inspections. So again, these are loaded up as tasks within the asset being the SWIP site number 6. And our inspector's task is inspect. Okay, it seems pretty easy. Looks like we've got a minus 99 difference here. That tells me something really bad went wrong here. We've got an OCI of 1. Yeah, it's beyond failing. Why is that? What are we talking about here? Kind of hard to see in this photo, but essentially our inspector found a ton of track out. So we're seeing the dirt leave the construction site and move into our MS4, which is La Cañada Drive. So, okay, we've got a problem. What's going on next? Our field inspectors fill out it's just a pre-populated PDF form. So they come in and give specifics for the site. And then we walk through kind of our MS4 requirements for SWIPs, just making sure we're adhering to the state practices. And then we've got a place for notes down below that gives more direction to the contractor. How can you bring your site back into compliance? We also give them a photo log, just kind of describing what we saw out there, trying to hold their hand with, here's the specific problem, please go out and address that. And once they have the opportunity to go make the corrections, we go back out and re-inspect. And they did indeed go and clean everything back up. The streets were swept, water was put back out, the trash was picked up, whatever it may be. And you can see that OCI coming right back up, which again, if you go back in time, you can kind of march along. Oh, look, they had a 1 here. And then a month later, they got all the activities cleaned up. They're back at 100. So you can kind of see that wave, if you will, of the OCI moving up and down, which again is nice to go back and say, did we have any deficient sites when the state is asking in their annual reports? Why, yes, we had corrective actions on XYZ sites. It's very easy to extract the data back out and publish that for the state in their annual reports. And then again, here's a post-inspection photo. Again, kind of hard to see the sun glare, but they did indeed sweep the street to our satisfaction, and we documented that. So again, really an efficient, effective way to manage your assets here, and then also look at it a little bit differently. Again, SWIPs aren't really an asset, but if you think about it that way, they can be. It's all encapsulated within that particular GIS shapefile or dot, and then we're using all the fields in Cartograph to kind of manipulate the metadata and serve our needs here. And that's really all I have here. I do know Marana is using Cartograph. I believe the city of Tucson is using Cartograph. Now, how they're using it or what they're using it for, I can't specifically tell you, but I know they've got those platforms, and there might be potential to expand upon that, but it takes resources. Back to Chris's point, it's all resource driven. We might be the only entity down here in Southern Arizona that's charging a stormwater fee. I know the city's got their green infrastructure fee, but that really isn't for SWIPs. That's really not for general water quality inspections. It's more for the LID retrofits and trying to get stormwater quality up and harvest more stormwater. But Oro Valley's got a specific stormwater utility with a fee associated with that. And to Chris's point as well, we do offer a discount. If you sweep your commercial property on your own without us telling you, and you can document it and demonstrate it to us, if you can do outreach to your customers in some form or fashion, we will entertain giving you a discount on that fee, because you truly are helping us improve the water quality or manage our floodplains. So there are opportunities out there, if you can institute a stormwater fee, to give back to the community a little bit and still meet the goals from the state and the Fed. So it's working pretty well for us. Again, a little easier for us in Oro Valley. We've got a little more affluent folks. We've got a little bit of folks with time on their hands to go help us clean up. And there's a true desire to keep things clean. And that's just makes my job that much easier. But nonetheless, Scott or I are here to answer any questions. And I see Elizabeth's hands up.
Oh, hi, yes. Nice presentation, John. It looks like it's very effective for you. I like the photos that you take. That's an important aspect of this. We also use it, but we use it for storm drain system for street maintenance. They also use it for other concerns that the community will call in for. And so we do use Cartograph for that. But for our stormwater IDDE and our FSO logs, we are using SAM's software, SAM's stormwater module. Tucson Water has a module, and Environmental Services Department has another SAM's module. So we just tagged along and did the SAM's stormwater one.
That makes sense.
And as far as the fees, we do have two fees. We have a stormwater fee that was part of the water bill way back years ago. And then we have the GSI or the GI storm to shade fee that's more current. And that was made permanent, I think last year or this year, earlier this year.
Yep.
And that that program has a bigger fee. Our stormwater fee is like 7% of what the GSI fee is, unfortunately.
Yeah, and GSI is certainly the flavor du jour right now, and there's a lot of benefits to it. But again, I think it's somewhat detracting away from managing the floodplains and making sure the water runoff is as clean as we can make it. And it's funny because GSI actually helps with both of those things. But all I will tell you is up here in Oro Valley, our transportation group is using Cartograph. Our water utility is using Cartograph. Our operations and maintenance group is using it. Our fleet and facilities are using it. Parks and Recreation is using it. But it really doesn't matter. There's lots of software platforms out there. It's, to me, getting the resources dedicated at Public Works, Environmental Services, water utilities, wherever, getting somebody focused in on stormwater management. There's miles and miles and miles of storm drain that you really can't physically get in to see. Well, who's mapping all that stuff? Who's ensuring that it's accurate? And I would like to see more focus, somewhat like the Pima County Wastewater Group does. We probably ought to get cameras in there every once in a while. For the sake of homeless, I mean, they're probably in there too, but we need more eyeballs underground. Easy to look at a catch basin, awfully hard to look at 300 feet of storm drain pipe sitting underneath target. We haven't uncorked that just yet, but we're gearing up to try to get maybe ProPipe out here and go camera all of our storm sewer systems, just so we know what the heck we've got. It's a challenge. Nobody wants to pay for it. Paul, I see your hand up.
Thanks, John. Yes, we do use Cartograph here. Like you said, streets, a lot for asset inventory. we are using it in a fashion for our stormwater reviews or inspections of the post-construction stormwater features that's required in the MS4. But I have a question. We run into issues where we have town-owned post-construction stormwater features that connect to private post-construction features. We've got, for example, a storm drain pipe that runs into a dry well. The pipe is all town. The dry well is on private property maintained by the HOA. What do you guys do in that situation?
Oh boy, Paula, you're singing right up my tree here. Very challenging. We are actually mapping all the private infrastructure as well, but that's not really your question. We've run into a scenario where we've got a regional channel that is owned by Pima County, it's owned by Oro Valley, it's owned by an HOA, it's owned by another HOA. Ensuring that everybody's doing their part is uber difficult. And the system really won't work properly unless everybody's chipping in and doing their little bit. Did you go out and I know you do it in Marana, but we don't do it much here. Did you mow the grass in that channel? Did you do your section? Because we're getting ready to do ours. And I don't want the water to back up because you didn't do your part. It really falls on the back of the inspectors, Paula. We've got to get out and see this stuff in person. We've got a goal every year of seeing 20% of our assets, and that's asking a lot as we continue to grow. But we physically want to put eyeballs on everything every 5 years, unless we've got that condition category down there that says monitor yearly. And then reaching out to the HOAs and telling them, hey, you got to get out there and maintain this thing. We do have fines that we can levy. We don't do it very often. We really try to lean into the good graces of everybody. Hey, it's important for you to maintain this because it will impact your people too, or cause if we get to the failure point, cause a huge increase on your HOA dues. Much better to take care of it a little bit at a time than do a full-blown replacement. But you can't do that unless you see it. So we are wanting to see the public and the private infrastructure and just make sure it's all as functional and in good operation standing as practical. But it's a very difficult conundrum that you're facing there. I'd say just don't tie into that private infrastructure, but it's probably too late. We have been solicited by a few HOAs to take over their drainage infrastructure, which is going to probably be a theme across all the entities down here. Hey, we're a small HOA. We physically cannot maintain that bank protection when it fails. We need the town to step in. We've done it a few times, but we don't have that kind of money either. So I'll go back to Chris Montague Breakwell's bit of information. Education and outreach. Some folks don't even know that they're supposed to maintain that stuff, Paula. They don't even know they own that dry well, let alone do anything about it. So we work really hard to map all the new subdivisions and isolate all the stormwater infrastructure. Hopefully they reach out to us, but we're proactive sometimes. There's only so many property management companies. We'll give them a map. Hey, here's all the private infrastructure you're going to be responsible for. Here's all the public stuff we're responsible for. We need to meet in the middle, and you share information, we'll share information, and let's partner up on this particular thing. But getting to them as those connections are being made are just utterly important. We all know HOAs have rollover. Property management companies have rollover. New management companies are brought in all the time. So we're constantly pounding the pavement. Who's on your board right now? Do you want us to come talk to you? Who's your management company? Because we charge a stormwater fee, we got a pretty good handle on that because we're billing HOAs too for their pools, their ramadas, their sidewalks, their pavements. So more often than not, we're already kind of reaching out to them and saying, hey, you owe us money, and let me see what you're doing with your infrastructure. So a little bit easier for us up here, but nonetheless, it's a difficult problem, and education and outreach is probably our best bet right now, Paula.
All right. Well, it's good to know also that we're not alone. So
No, you're not.
thank you.
You're welcome. Marie, I see your hand up.
Yes, thank you for the presentation. I need about 15 minutes to do my presentation, and I'm wondering if there's a way that we could wrap this up.
Yeah, I'm all done.
Okay.
Oh, yes, thank you, everyone. I was just going to mention that too. Having a great discussion. But if we can move on to agenda item number 5, we have Marie Light here, and Marie will be providing some stormwater outreach related insights from the clean water portion of PDEQ's 2022 to 2023 Pima County Clean Air Program Campaign and Clean Water Program Campaign Survey. And if we have a little bit of extra time afterward, we can have a brief discussion about regional stormwater pollution prevention messaging needs. If we run out of time, then we can table that for a future meeting in the new year. So thank you, everybody. And I'll turn it over to Marie.
Thank you. So Pima County has been doing a stormwater survey each spring, and to identify what the public's perceptions are towards stormwater and what kinds of behaviors people are willing if there's a waste disposal going on, and then see if there's any changes that are taking place. The phone survey is a combination of phone survey and an internet survey. So 250 questions come from the internet and 250 come from a phone. And it's broken up into these 4 areas. The northwest is Marana and Oro Valley. The central portion is a portion of City of Tucson, and then the east has got a lot of unincorporated Pima County, Vail, and then the southern area encompasses a number of the MS4s, the Davis-Monthan, South Tucson, the VA, and some phase 2s that are coming up, probably Sahuarita. One of the key things is we do have some turnover of people in this area, and there's about 26% that are here less than 5 years. So this means that regular outreach is very important to keep people informed. There are a number of goals that are set out for this, and to have an equal distribution between men and women, and as well as representing the different age groups. So they're between 14 and 17% for each one of these age groups. There are a number of other demographic information that we collect, but I just wanted to do a brief intro here. One of the key questions that we ask is, where does the stormwater that flows into drains end up? And we can see that 40% this year think that it goes to a river or wash, and 15% ultimately towards groundwater. One of the concerning trends that we've been observing is that there's been a decrease in the number of people who understand where the stormwater goes. It's been declining 11% for river or the wash. And there's been this big jump in people who are not sure, don't know where it actually goes. So for sure, they're not going to treatment plants, sewage plants, or into canals. We added a question about whether the respondent was aware of Clean Water Starts With Me or Keep Our Water Clean campaigns. And it used to be a lot higher back in 2016, and it was declining steadily until 2019, when it is kind of leveled off around 42%. And we are seeing some parallel changes in the other questions that we are asking. And of importance, how important is the entrance of polluting materials into storm drains? In 2018, 42% thought it was serious, and now only 20%. The majority of people are believing that it's just a moderate problem. And I think Chris MB's presentation was showing that there are some serious issues that are going on in our MS4s that do need to be taken care of. We also want to know what kinds of activities people are interested in partaking. And over the years, we've been seeing that there's been a wonderful increase in the number of people who use doggy bags to clean up after their pets. There is a continual increase with safe disposal of chemicals. Reporting a spill is still below where we would like to see it. And move this in case this is interrupting anything. And replacing a toxic compound with a non-toxic compound. About half the people are willing to do that, but certainly we need more. The last two columns are something that's important to show. We're asking people, are they willing to gather stormwater to use for watering plants? And people are very much interested in doing that, very likely. But if we ask them, are you willing to install green infrastructure? They're only 27% say that they're likely. So the key takeaway from this is that the language that we use is really important. We need to use language that is understandable to people. Green infrastructure is becoming popular, but it's not as common as people think. And then, for sure, we want to know if you saw someone dumping trash or chemicals into a storm drain or wash and wanted to report them, who would you call? And so we're really glad that they're contacting the police department or using 911. But there are a larger number of people who are not sure, don't know who to be calling. One of the things that is very interesting to me over time here is that after COVID, there was a big change in how people were doing things. So you notice for contacting the health department and the sanitation department, we were at 14 and 16% in 2018, but it dropped down to 8 and 9% in 2021 and 23. So we're not exactly sure what's causing that, but people are definitely behaving differently. So my takeaways are that it's really important to continue the outreach for those 26% who are here less than 5 years. And pet waste is increasing with time and is accomplished by 83 to 86% of them. 73 to 86% of the residents. Languaging is important in using descriptive terms rather than terminology that professionals would use. And then the 14% decline in people's awareness of the slogans parallels the decline in knowing where stormwater goes, viewing stormwater pollution as a serious problem, and reporting illicit discharges. So I would be very interested to see what the interest would be in others to continue this.
Marie, are these survey results going to change how you guys are doing anything? I mean, it sounds to me like we just need to re-up the amount of money for outreach, as it obviously kind of worked pretty well in 18 and before, and then it waned as perhaps funding dried up a little bit.
So I'm not sure if it was funding that changed. I know that when PAG stopped their outreach program, that's where we had a drop off. We've continued our outreach program, and I think other people have as well. So I'm interested in what PAG would like to do with restarting their program.
Yeah, thank you, Marie. So with our program, we've been aiming to do what we can, given the funding and support that we have for our program, and trying to maintain and make our existing outreach materials that we developed with this group available. And we provided some templates when some of the MS4s have asked. And so one of the things that we were thinking about was trying to explore potentially group buys, since we don't have the funding available or the ability at this time under our program to print and distribute materials. So one of the things we were thinking about was kind of asking this group if there was any support for working together on that, or identifying potential funding sources where this group could, apply for a grant, or find some sort of source where it would be, we would be able to update and print more materials or get more things into magazines or the other venues that we used to present the outreach materials into. So I think that's a valuable discussion to have with everybody, and I'm not sure where everybody stands on that. But I see a few hands up. I'm not sure if.
Yeah, so I think Elizabeth, you had a question, and then Paula. Either one of you? Elizabeth, would you like to start? Okay, how about you, Paula? I know you're there.
I just this year I was looking at our MS4 thing that we have to do, and one of the things is we have to evaluate how our BMPs, how the stuff that we're doing is working, and that got me thinking to this survey that you do, because that's the one thing in our MS4 that is so hard to figure out, is how to quantify if what we're doing is working. So to me, I think that this survey has value in that, even though, Marana is in there as a region. It's not like these are specific Marana people, but you can definitely say that people travel all throughout Pima County, so you can use it as a not a predictor of whatever, of whether or not people are getting the message out there. So I think for that reason, in and of itself, I think it's important.
Thank you. We've really been grappling too with how to measure the effectiveness of the program. And the survey is one, and the other is the water quality results, even though each one of those 5 types is just a subset of all the land that is within Pima County. Yeah. One thing for PEG is I know that Pima County's funding to PEG has been consistent throughout these last years. And so it seems like some of those fundings have been diverted away from doing the outreach. And I'm wondering if you can bring that back.
I can help Melanie if you'd like. So our funding has varied over the years. We at one point I think did use the local funds that the jurisdictions give, possibly because that has funded different aspects of our water program. And in other years we actually used transportation pollution mitigation funds. And that was more steady approval process, but I think it might be at a level up above, and I don't know if anyone can partake in that, but it's up to the regional council to kind of request to continue to support. So I think another means we've considered is pursuing grants. And so it's kind of listening with those kinds of ears to Chris's presentation to see what we could do at least short term to do a couple of years of outreach funding and make the case that it does the trick.
And to piggyback on that a bit, Mead, at the last Sustainable Cities joint meeting here for LID, they put together 3 speakers, and one was from WIFA, one was from ADEQ with the 604B, and the other source was the WITHIA revolving funds. Those mostly all seem like loans. So I'm interested in this OSG pot of money. But getting back to the outreach stuff, we do stuff at schools for kids. It'd be nice to see the region get together and just have some region specific materials that we can be handing out to the kids. And it's good. I want to do that kind of outreach, but the kids aren't the ones that are creating the mess here. So something Oro Valley had done previously to COVID is an HOA forum. And I don't think we can do it regionally. That's just too large. But maybe each agency can kind of start carving that out. And back to kind of Paula's question during my presentation, we've got to arm these HOAs with what their responsibilities are and how they can help themselves and the agencies on top of that might be responsible for the MS4. It'd be nice to see some help from PAG in how do we set those up, or are there materials we can go into an HOA forum and hand out that people can take away and hopefully put in place at their homes?
I think that's a great area we can help, where it's just staff support to create like a template that could be used in every jurisdiction and even hold. We used to do those construction forums to hold the event together where every jurisdiction could present.
Bingo. Because we're promoting that one water thing. I know I've sat through it with James McAdam a few times, but we truly are all one water here, all of us. So it don't matter if we're in Oro Valley or South Tucson or Marana. We're all contributing to the groundwater here in some form or fashion. And it'd be nice to see some branded stuff at the region level that we're all kind of promoting and handing out. Just some thoughts.
I like that. And earlier you mentioned, I think it was outreach to commercial sites about maintaining private infrastructure. And that's an area where we haven't provided anything in a template before. And usually we would start by looking at what each jurisdiction has and assembling it together to see what common messages could be created, and if nobody's created anything yet, then just having that discussion.
Yeah.
What time of year is best for you all lately? I imagine dry seasons. If we were to keep up this conversation, say in the winter or spring.
Winter. October to April.
I would say anytime is good for us.
Okay.
But yeah, probably dry.
Yeah.
For Pima County, it's good from January through May.
And do you like having these sort of end of year meetings as well? We're hoping to continue with at least a couple meetings a year. So I'm trying to get a sense of that. Because we could have more than two if you request it.
Mead, this is Scott Bennett. I appreciate the end of the year meeting, and especially when there's new permits and things like that, or any change to policy up at ADEQ. That's when it's especially helpful. And with regard to timing and outreach, I'm available most of the time. I can certainly carve out some time to discuss it if you would like. It's not a
I
problem.
concur, Scott. You need to get back to work, dude.
Yeah. Exactly. So
Right. Yeah, I'll hand it back to Marie and Melanie.
All right. Anything else that you wanted to add, Marie, before we wrap up?
So we really liked the system where you had the template of the poop, the scoop the poop. And so we've printed those and distributed them. And so we liked having that format and where we could put our logo in there and our contact information. I think that's helpful for people. And I don't know if this would be workable for the other MS4s to have to use that. Paula or John, are you interested in that?
I am, yes, indeed.
Okay.
back in 2016, PAG had some dog poop stickers we put on garbage cans. That's effective. If we could get those back, that would be very nice.
And our Parks and Rec department liked it as well.
Is that popular?
Yes, our Parks and Rec guys, they're putting them out on the on all of our trails, because there's some areas where people, I don't know, it's like they get a hot spot and then they're like, okay, there needs to be a trash can with this this logo on it and some bags.
No poop on the loop.
Oh, I like that.
That's Scott. I'll have to give credit to Scott.
All right,
and
Scott.
we got that message at our last outreach.
Nice.
All right. Well, thank you so much, everyone. We're at the end of our allotted time for this meeting, but let's definitely pick this discussion back up sometime in the new year. So with that, I will adjourn the meeting. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks for